Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football after the Seahawks pull out the victory against the visiting Arizona Cardinals on Sunday. We've got all sorts of updates for you, unfortunate injury news as well that we just became aware of within the last half an hour. And we'll go over all the good plays, the bad and the ugly, and get you all wrapped up for this game. Welcome in, Keith.
Yeah, so coming off a win, 20-10 over Arizona. Always nice to get a win. This one just didn't feel like a 20-10 win. This is a game where, in a sense, it kind of felt like the team deserved to lose at times. So definitely an interesting game to talk about.
Yeah, there's only been one other time in franchise history that a team, the Seahawks, have given up a negative 3 turnover ratio in a game and come away with a double-digit victory. The other time was 2008 against these very same Arizona Cardinals. So it doesn't happen very often in the NFL that you can turn the ball over 3 times and win in a game. Usually that dictates that you've got a pretty darn good defense and you made enough plays on offense to somehow pull it out and faced a poor team. And that's pretty much the formula for this game. We faced a bad team that played pretty well because they play hard. And we talked about that before the game. They faded down the stretch. They did that. Seahawks defense really just came up huge in this game. And the offense, had its scoring opportunities, did score enough to win this game, but also had its issues. Geno Smith had a couple of turnovers, one by interception, had a fumble, as well as DJ Dallas on a fumble. And Geno again had his turnover in the red zone there that kind of took points off the board. They were pretty much guaranteed 3, looking to go in and get more. And it's been tough. I mean,
it's been a tough couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Really, it's been 2.5 since we've seen him play well, and that's starting to get worrisome.
Yeah, I mean, it's Coughlin wrote, Matt Coughlin wrote that Seahawks quarterback Geno Smith has become about as dangerous to his own team as he is to opposing defenses. Yeah, that's hyperbole a little bit, but at the same time, it's it's apropos as far as these games could have gone either way. And if you're facing inferior opponents, or better opponents, I should say, they eke out these wins, as in the Cincinnati Bengals did.
So and that's really what it comes down to. These last 2 games have been very similar. The defense has played really, really well. The offense has played poorly, with a lot of that stemming from the play of the quarterback, Geno Smith. And against a good team, they lost. And against a bad team, they hung on and won. But you can't play like this and win regularly in the NFL. They've got to get this figured out.
So it's not like Geno played bad statistically. He connected on 75% of his passes for 219 yards and a couple of touchdowns, 1 interception, had a passer rating of 110. So if you looked at those things, you'd be like, what's the problem? Well, it's the red zone mistakes. It's the critical mistakes at critical times. It's taking points off the board, essentially, when you're down in opposing defense's territory and you turn the ball over. Those are the sorts of things we're talking about. And, Geno still did the job. I mean, he had 5 passes over 18 yards in this game, including a 28-yarder to Smith and Jigba, a 25-yarder to Noah Fant. He had the 2 touchdowns, that one to Njigba, and the Bobo thing was just amazing. We can talk about that more. That's kind of more credit to Jake Bobo. If you look at that play closely, Gino just kind of threw it up there. Jake Bobo made that play. He had a wide open Ken Walker on the other side of the end zone, completely nobody within 15 yards of him. Gino just kind of honed in over on the right side there and found Bobo, but he made the play. So it's not a complete. They were
also a millimeter away from that being out of bounds, and having it be yet another red zone failure where they don't get points when they need points. So, I mean, it's just not a great decision. And you're right. I mean, he had a guy wide open and chose the hard route. And when you look at the interception that he threw at the 1 yard line, he threw to a guy that wasn't open and was never going to be open and had multiple guys there. It was just not a good choice to throw the football there at all.
And he hesitated more. He double clutched more than one time on that play, and he still threw it, forced it in there. And really it wasn't even a difficult interception at all. It was just the guy was standing right in front of our receiver and he made the play. And
then you throw in the fumble that he had where, Oluwatimi put the ball right in his hands. This was not a center issue. This was entirely him not remembering to grab the ball before he turned.
I'm gonna take issue with that. I'm just gonna say this.
Go back and watch the replay. It hit him in both hands.
I'm gonna say this. Oluwatimi came out in his little statement and said that it was on him. He was slightly late on the snap. And if you go look at and slow it down, I mean, it's like microseconds, but if you go and you slow it down, it's true. Gino was kind of slightly pulling out the line. Everyone else on the line was moving, and Oluwatimi snaps the ball. So it is a microsecond late, but at the same time, these guys snap over and over and over and over and over again.
That's
week in, week out.
That's Oluwatimi falling on his sword for his teammate.
That may be true. But, you can see that slight delay. I did anyway.
It wasn't a bad snap.
It wasn't a bad snap.
It literally hit him in both hands.
Slightly late. Yeah.
You've got it. Whatever.
Yeah. I'm not trying to make excuses for Gino here. I'm just saying it's football. Stuff happens. That was a play. It should have been easy, and they just made it hard. Whether it was Oluwatimi or Gino, it's the quarterback that takes responsibility for that situation for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the bigger thing. It's like Gino's really making it difficult for the fan base to fall in love with him and stay in love with him and want him to take this team, as far as it can go and so forth. He's under contract next year, but it's a contract that the team can move on from if needed. And it doesn't preclude the Seahawks from finding somebody else that can be their quarterback of the future. And it looks more and more like that every week, that's kind of what the team is going to need to do. If you go back and you take a look at the last several games, including games from last year. Last year, the Seahawks started the season 6-3. Since then, including the playoff loss, they are 7-7. And that's exactly what we're seeing when we watch the tape. We're beating teams that were better talent across the board, and we're kind of eking those things out. Teams come in here that play harder than us, that are better than us as far as talent on the field. Gino is not yet been able to overcome those sorts of games, and it's. I mean, if this doesn't improve, we're going to be one and done in the playoffs, or we may not even get there because it's going to be a tough conference. I think right now we're fourth in the NFC at 4-2, but we've got some tough games coming up. Let me share with everyone this. Browns coming into town. They're 4-2. The Ravens are 5-2. Commanders 3-4. Rams 3-4. But we lost the first game. 49ers 5-1. Cowboys 4-2. 49ers 5-1. Eagles 5-1. Man, that stretch right there is brutal. I thought it was going to be slightly easier with the Browns and the Ravens and the Commanders, but those teams are playing pretty well. So that's a tough stretch. It's going to tell the tale of the entire season in this next 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, and that really comes down to it. The Seahawks paid Geno because he put together. It was a great story last year. Put together a fine run of games. Play dropped off at the end of the season, but a lot of that could be easily attributed to the offensive line's play that dropped off at the same time. So I think it's fairly, safe to like give him a pass on some of that, but they need him to come out and play like he did last year. And he hasn't. And for the last 2.5 games, ever since he took that kind of awkward, semi-legal hit going out of bounds in the Carolina game, he hasn't been good. He just hasn't. In the Carolina game, it was because his mind was elsewhere. He was like running over to jot the Panther players between snaps. It was just awkward and awful, and you could tell he just wasn't focused. But in these last 2 games, he's just been bad. And I know statistically it looks better, but it just isn't. I mean, you've got
it's uneven. It's like he has these great throws. He makes great decisions, makes great throws. He hits the guys that he needs to hit. The Njigba thing is a perfect example. Guys wide open, going down for a touchdown. Geno makes that throw. It's a 35-yard, throw, and execution was perfect. The Jake Bobo thing, it's a very difficult throw. I will say this: that was the hardest throw, catch, touchdown combination in the NFL this year, with only a 11% chance of success according to Next Gen Stats.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. That seems about right.
And so there's these outstanding plays that you're like, oh my gosh, hero ball. And then there's the things where he double clutches and stares down his receiver for 3-4 seconds and then makes the throw anyway. And then it's unsurprisingly intercepted. Let's talk about some fun stuff though. Some good individual performance plays. So let's stay on the offense really quick. We talked about Njigba a little bit. Combined with Jake Bobo, they had 8 catches for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's the real big story in this game, along, I think, with Kenneth Walker having over 100 yards on 28 carries. Really nothing that broke out for Ken other than I think they had one 20-plus yard run, and everything 25. Else was like 3.5, 4 yards a carry.
He grinded out. He grinded out a lot of yards the hard way. Like had a really good run where he, started up inside and then bounced it to the right and went down the sideline and looked great. That was the big 25-yard run. But overall, it was hard going for him. It really was. And he still managed to just continue to fall forward, continue to make guys miss.
You didn't see that last year.
Yeah, last year it was a lot of if he had clean blocking and a clean hole, he had a big run. Or if he could bounce and get to the outside, he could make a big play. But in terms of the grinding, he wasn't much of a grinder. I think that's why they went and drafted Charbonnet, who is a grinder. He's not the big play guy, but he is a grinder. I think that was why they went and drafted him. But no, Walker looked good in this one. I liked what I saw. I liked him lowering his shoulder and punishing linebackers a few times in this game. Like that's the kind of stuff that Pete Carroll loves. Honestly, I love. Like that's what I want out of running back. I want them to run people over, and even if they get tackled, let the guy there who's tackling them feel it. And Walker did a lot of that. I like what I saw from him in this game.
Yeah. This seemed like again, a tale of two halves kind of a game for the Seahawks on defense. Arizona went into halftime with 104 rushing yards from the first 2 quarters and a touchdown on the ground. But for the third and fourth quarters, Seattle's rush defense really just came to play. Seattle only allowed 23 yards rushing on 8 total carries the rest of the game. Obviously, the Cardinals were playing from behind, but nonetheless, they're playing at an elite level on run defense on this team. Mm-hmm. And, players of the game on defense, I mean, you could just have a ton of different options. Boye Mafe, 3 tackles, a sack. Jordan Brooks, 9 tackles, half a sack. Thought he had an outstanding game. Bobby Wagner, 9 tackles. Darrell Taylor, a sack and a half. Jamal Adams, 6 tackles. Jerron Reed, a sack. But Devin Witherspoon, Keith, if you take away, he had the interception and the sack nullified by penalties. If you add that to a stat line at 3 tackles, a pass defense, add the interception and the sack, and then you add in one of the hardest hits you'll see this season on a reception by Rondale Moore in the third quarter there, where he just clobbered him. And it's shocking that he held onto the ball, but that was a perfectly legal hit, but a fierce, like just, pounding hit. Devin Witherspoon, dude, he's turned into the best player on the Seahawks, maybe in the entire team in 6-7 games.
Yeah. I mean, he's played really well this season. It's been fun. He's been fun. I mean, that's been such a great draft pick. I know that cornerback wasn't a need when they took him and all of that, but man, did they get a good player. Yeah. They got a special player. At this point,
he's going to be the personality of the defense for a long time.
At this point, he looks like the defensive player of the year, or defensive rookie of the year. We'll go that route. More than the player of the year, but he has played really well. He has looked every bit the part of the 5th overall pick in the draft.
Well, let me tell you this. He's not too far away from being the player of the year. And the reason I say that is look at these rankings. Overall, this is Pro Football Focus, grain of salt, get it. Overall defense, 88.5, second in the NFL. Run defense, 90.3, second in the NFL. Pass rushing, 92.2, first in the NFL. That's not including the sack he got taken away from. Coverage is 80.8, second in the NFL. Pass breakups, tied for first with 5 total. He added to that, so he's got 1 more. Passer rating allowed, 57.8, third in the NFL. Those are all against every other cornerback in the NFL, not just rookies, everyone. Mm-hmm. When you combine all of those things together, that's the best in the NFL, dude. That's the best.
Yeah. He's playing every bit as well as Sauce Gardner did last year when he was the defensive rookie of the year. He's looked every bit as good as Reek Woolen was last year when he was second in terms of defensive rookie of the year. I mean,
and should have probably won it.
Yeah. Spoon has been a very special player, and I'm here for this, right? I'm here for it. He is very quickly becoming a favorite player to watch.
So when you take a look at some of the other plays and players, Jake Bobo with 4 catches, 61 yards and a touchdown. When you add into the extra reception that Jake Bobo had, where he got also knocked hard as well and held onto the ball, he's turning into a really special fan favorite player. Definitely one of the best favorite role players the Seahawks have had for a while.
That first quarter pass down the left sideline where he made it look like he was running, a slant or a post and then turned outside. I mean, that is as good of a route as you'll see. And I know people talk about, he doesn't have the speed and all of that, but he was every bit as fast as he needed to be to get that separation, get that ball. It was a good pass by Gino.
And the spatial awareness too on that touchdown. I mean, those are the qualities I think that you talk about that separate him from other, and everyone talked about in training camp, all his, Lockett and DK Metcalf and his work ethic and just those intangible skills that he brings to the table beyond speed makes him a complete player. And potentially could be the long-term third wide receiver kind of option in Seattle, I think, as maybe Njigba moves into that Tyler Lockett role. Eventually, Tyler's not getting any younger, and you've got DK Metcalf. You've got the entire fan base is upset at Metcalf, wants to trade him. It's ludicrous. It's crazy. Metcalf is one of the most productive wide receivers in the NFL, but nonetheless, But there's going to be 3 or 4 guys here at the wide receiver spot now for a while. And it's a really good situation.
Yeah, I really liked what I saw from Bo. But let's not discredit Smith and Jigba, who got elevated into that number 2 role with Metcalf out with injury, and with a larger role.
Best outing. Yeah.
With a larger role, you saw what we expected to see from him. He did well. He got that touchdown was fun, but it was more than just a touchdown. It was to me, what was more important were the third down conversions. He went out, settled into his zone, caught the ball through contact, moved the chains. Like the team needs him to do that regularly. And he looked really good in this game.
I mentioned Ken Walker already. I also want to shout out to Oluwatimi and Bradford again, stepping in for injured players and just seamlessly operating as low that they're entrenched long-term starters, and I think they will be as the season or
Bradford just continues to impress.
Yeah, he's the real deal.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so those are some of the positives. And we can talk about the defense a little bit more too. But the negative part of this is the second half offense. And on their first drive of the second half, Seattle had a 1st and goal at the 1, but settled for a field goal. That's where Geno, flew through the air at the sideline there. They couldn't get it in after that. On the next drive, Geno threw an interception inside the red zone when the team, could have at least had a field goal there to make it a 2-score game, and they didn't. On the third drive, Geno fumbled the snap. On the fourth drive, Seattle lost 2 yards and punted, still with a 7-point lead. Seahawks haven't scored an offensive touchdown in the second half since week 3.
Yikes! Yeah, that's not gonna be good enough, especially against a team like Arizona that's been the worst second half team in the NFL. Now, granted, Arizona's matched what they usually do in the second half in her offensively, which is nothing. But they aren't a good second half team defensively either. And for Seattle to not do much, that's disheartening. And it really comes down to missed opportunities. I mean, they gave away a possession with the fumble. They gave away a score with the interception. They got down in there and failed on another drive, which, I mean, partly they lined up and tried to run Ken Walker up the middle twice, and couldn't get there. And some of that's a lot of that's blocking. That I don't want to put that on Geno because he's not the one calling that play. But this is a team that wants to be able to run the ball. It wants to be able to run the ball when the opposing team knows they're going to run it. And for them to get down to the goal line, line up twice, and run Walker up the middle and not be able to get in is disappointing. I think this is that right there was when this team missed Charbonnet. Because as much as Ken Walker has been better about grinding those yards and getting yards after contact, that's who Charbonnet is. He is that wrecking ball that it doesn't matter if you hit him. He's still moving type of guy. And I think they would have definitely benefited having him in there at the goal line.
I agree with that. I also think that it's a lack of creativity as well. I mean, if you know that that's not working, and you know that over time, I mean, Seattle's only 2 of 8 in the last 2 games in red zone conversion opportunities, then get creative a little bit. Move that pocket, get the outside run going. Ken Walker's excellent at that, finding seams, starting him outside, cutting inside. Give him an opportunity there as well. Don't run the same play twice. But the Seahawks are 4-2 because the defense has given up a combined 30 points in the last 3 games. And below 250 yards and 17 points for 3 straight games.
And again, and that's not just bad opponents, because one of those games is the freaking Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon and that offense. That's a really good offense that Seattle's defense shut down.
Check this out: 19 of the last 20 drives against the Seahawks defense have been for 26 yards or less. 26 of the last 34 drives against the defense have been under 30 yards or less.
Yeah,
they allowed 5 for 15 on third down conversions and 0 for 3 against the Cardinals. So here's the last 3 games combined for the Seahawks defense. Allowed the lowest yards per game, 237. Allowed 407.3 over the first 3. Lowest points per game, 10. Most sacks, 18. 3-point yards, 3.7 yards per play, 20.9 yards per drive, and 0.9 points per drive, all first in the NFL.
0.9. That's nice. That is a number. I mean, anything under about
and that's what's keeping us in these games. We didn't think that, we talked almost somewhat jokingly that we could potentially, and I kind of was on that train a little bit more than you maybe, of potentially this defense could end up being kind of a top 10 defense, but realistically we were thinking if they can get into the top 15, maybe even around 15 with a top 5 offense, this team could potentially be a contender for the, NFC championship type thing. And that was the optimal side of thinking as best case scenario. This defense is really kind of starting to exceed expectations. And when you take a look at the differences, it's Witherspoon coming into his own, and it's the addition of Jamal Adams back into the fold.
That should not be understated, is that Jamal Adams coming back and Reek Woolen getting healthy. Those two things in the secondary correspond to this defense turning a corner and being just great.
And Jordan Brooks is playing really well, and looks like Bobby Wagner's having the best season he's ever had. I'm laughing, but really,
not really.
It's great.
I'm going to disagree with that.
You know what I mean, though. He's playing really well.
He's playing really well, but this is the first time we've ever seen him simply be too slow to make plays repeatedly in every game. So he's not having the greatest season. He's playing really well, but this is not vintage Bobby Wagner that we're watching. Instead, we're seeing... It
seems pretty vintage.
No, I don't think it's close. He's playing well.
Even Bobby Wagner at this level is still one of the best linebackers in the NFL, Keith.
Fair, but this is not anywhere close to what he was 5 years ago.
I know, but just the
old Bobby Wagner would have been
that he brings to the table, I think. But we're talking that's the physical description of Bobby Wagner, but it's not just that.
I know.
It's the whole package for him.
Part of it is what Bobby Wagner does for Jordan Brooks, because what we saw last year for Jordan Brooks was that physically very gifted, but not always in the right place and not always like thinking too much. You know what I mean? Like that's the problem. He's not always reacting quite as fast. And with Bobby Wagner beside him, even though Wagner can't always make the plays that he used to because of age winning, he makes Jordan Brooks so much better that Brooks can make up for some of that. And that's the kind of thing that shouldn't be understated, because that's the kind of influence that Bobby Wagner has. He makes the guys around him better. And that's going to be important going forward, since the one thing that I don't think we mentioned yet is that they're going to have some issues at linebacker, because they lost outside linebacker Uchenna Nwasu for the season.
Yeah. So Pete came out yesterday and said he had a pec injury. I didn't know how severe it would be. Found out the worst case scenario this just before we push record, that Uchenna Nwasu is going to be lost for the season, having a pectoral muscle surgery. So season ending, which is difficult because Uchenna Nwasu is one of the best players on this defense. Excellent against the run, also gets to the passer. Not only with sacks, but just pressures and quarterback hits. So that's going to be a big loss for this defense. How do we overcome that, Keith? The only options really on the roster, if you count the 10-man roster, the 15-man practice squad is Tyreek Smith and Levi Bell at that position.
I think it comes more from, I mean, yes, they're going to have to do that, but it's more of a next man up situation. And what we saw in this game, because he got hurt early in the second quarter in this Arizona game, and what we saw was more Darrell Taylor. We know that Boye Mafe is having a great year. He's continuing to look like an absolute stud. And what we saw was more Darrell Taylor. And that was good a lot, except for the one Dobbs touchdown run where he
lost contain.
He lost contain and Dobbs got outside of him. And then three other people made some of the worst attempts at tackles that you'll ever see, which allowed Dobbs to get into the touchdown.
Rick Woolen had him dead to rights and hit him, but did not even lay a hand on him because he just thought he could knock him over. And Dobbs just bounced into Diggs and got in. It's just crazy.
Yeah, Diggs made very little. I mean, the effort was there, but very little impact on the play. That was pretty awful. Woolen's was awful. It was just overall not a good look for Seattle's defense on that one play, but it was one play, right? Let's, I don't want to beat that particular play, too badly because it was one play, right? It was a culmination of four really bad mistakes, 3 in tackling and 1 by, Taylor losing containment. But honestly, other than that play, what we saw from Taylor in this game was a lot of positive. Whether it was getting his hands up when he knew he wouldn't get there and batting a ball down, actually getting there a few times, just being really active and disruptive, both against the run and the pass. I think that him and Mafe are going to be fine as the starters. You're going to see Hall, the second round pick, Derek Hall, coming up and taking Darrell Taylor's snaps as the third pass rusher coming off the edge. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is a guy that needs to continue to work and get better, and playing time will make him better. What the problem is after that, because
they may make Drake Thomas come over and take a few snaps at rushing the passer as well. Yeah, he's kind of a guy that's on the roster that's played special teams. He's played both inside, off the ball linebacker and outside. And maybe they'll.
I like him more as an off the ball linebacker. My guess is that they bring Tyreek Smith up off the practice squad to fill that spot. But he goes to being the fourth guy, right? You have your main three with Hall, Mafe, and Taylor, and then Smith will get some snaps here and there, and mostly play special teams, which was what Hall's been doing. But it does definitely test the depth a little bit. I mean, you're talking about a really good player, and I know that the team is really deep at the position, but he's still a really good player, and that's Uchenna Nwosu. So hopefully the other guys are able to step up and get the job done. I actually think they will. I mean, Mafe's been so good this year that you haven't seen as much production from Uchenna Nwosu because he simply hasn't had time to get to the quarterback because Mafe's beating him there. And that's the kind of thing that you gotta like.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to have an impact. I agree that we've got, this was one of the strongest depth positions we had, on the team, but not anymore. With Nwasu's out, now you've got to really kind of step up. Tyreek Smith coming up off the practice squad, at least that would be the initial idea. The trade deadline's coming up. You never know. I would imagine that we're also looking at other teams' practice squads to see what's available out there initially. And then, if they feel like they need to, for whatever reason, there's the trade market too, if something needs to happen there. But I would imagine Tyreek Smith probably gets the nod to come up. Pete Carroll also indicated that he wasn't sure if Abe Lucas would be able to come back to practice this week. He felt leaning towards not. And but he did say that Kenny McIntosh and Jason Peters could be possibilities to begin practice this week and be available right away. As far as Kenny McIntosh is concerned, he's on the IR, so they'd have to, at least activate that part, and he'd have 21 days to make an appearance. Jason Peters is on the practice squad.
Yeah, he's on the practice squad, so it doesn't matter roster-wise, because when he is ready, they have a couple of weeks of elevating him off the practice squad before they have to figure out what they want to do roster-wise. And by then, hopefully, Abe Lucas will be back. It should be noted that Forsyth played right tackle in this game instead of Jake Curran. Yes. They made that move that I suggested in our show, because they listen to me, right? Oh wait, no, they
Seahawks did allow 4 sacks, but I can't tell you right now where they came from.
Yeah, some of those just came from Gino being Gino in this, but Curhan has the things he does really well, and that's run blocking. He's not a pass blocker. We know that. And then when you have him banged up with a hurt ankle, he's even worse. And so getting Forsyth over in that spot made the offensive line better. It really did.
So when you take a look at the future of the roster, Keith, and we've talked about this before, that we both felt like Curhan was a better fit on the inside, but there's not a lot of room there now. We've got some guards that are able to kind of fill that hole. Does Curran make the roster next year as a tackle or a guard, or does the team move on and really go find something else there?
I would have to look at his contract situation to find that out. I think that he is going into his 3rd year as an undrafted rookie, meaning that he still makes nothing next year. And I think he makes the roster simply for that reason, that he's a guy that the team can trust at right guard or right tackle. Is he great at? No, but he's a competent backup. And since he doesn't make anything, why not? And I could see that being the idea. But yeah, I mean, they may go looking elsewhere. I mean, they've drafted 2 tackles the last 2 years, and that worked out. They've drafted a guard center this last year, that worked out. They're really deciding whether or not to bring Damian Lewis back away from having 5 very good, very young offensive linemen, and worrying about backups. I mean, that's really where they're at. The line is in great shape, and I want to see them figure that part out. But, whether it be Forsyth or whether it be Curran, whether Haynes gets a chance to come back as a backup, or what they do with Evan Brown, do they move him outside, or not outside, but over to guard, or do they let him go and be a really good center elsewhere because they've got Oluwatimi? Those are all questions for this next offseason, but they're also not important questions, because you've got your starting offensive line up with young, cheap, really good players. And that is a great place to be.
So let's wrap this thing up. We won the game. At the end of the year, it's a win. It's a win right now as far as the standings are concerned. Something's got to get right with Gino and the offense. They've got the ability. We've got the talent. Something's got to click. I'm just kind of waiting for that breakout game where all of a sudden they put it all together, and then they continue to week in, week out to catch up with the defense. And when that happens, if it happens, this is going to be a pretty formidable team against any opponent. But coming up, we've got the Browns 4-2. Now they struggle on offense, and Watson was hurt again. Don't know exactly where they're going to be on quarterback, but their defense is and DVOA is a good defense.
Was he hurt?
I think he was, but I'll have to check.
That's been the kind of question since that game. Was he really hurt, or did they just bench him? But it was pretty clear he didn't have it. Yeah, either way. He was not right, and wasn't the Deshaun Watson that people remember from before all of his legal troubles. He wasn't playing well, and so for him, was he hurt or was he benched? It kind of felt like he got benched.
Interesting. So we're gonna have that conversation this week, and it's at home. And you know what else? Seahawks are going to be in throwback jerseys, Keith. So that'll be a fun game.
I'll be wearing my throwback jersey for a pregame show, and I'll also be wearing it during the game because
nice.
I freaking love that thing. So
is it your personal one, or is it Dave Craig, or who is it? Is it Cortez Largent. Kennedy? Steve Largent.
Steve Largent. Nice. Yep. Nice. I went and bought myself a throwback Largent jersey because why the hell not?
I never had a jersey until Lofa Tatupu came around, and somehow I was inspired by my first jersey, and it was a Lofa Tatupu jersey. Just back in around 2000.
Yeah, my wife had one of those Lofa Tatupu ones. I at the same time, I think I bought Trufant and she bought Lofa Tatupu.
Nice. We like defenses.
A long time ago.
We like defenses, Keith.
We do.
Okay. So let's get out of here. Fun show, good win. I'll take it. It's at times ugly, but it's a win against a conference opponent. So we'll take that all day long. So, all right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is on every podcast platform out there. Find your favorite one. Look for it. Search for it. Seahawks Playbook Podcast. When you find it, hit that subscribe button. Make sure it's in your feed all year long. And then our YouTube channel as well. We're out there 3 shows a week. And hit that subscribe button as well. If you like it, share it, and leave a great comment. We'll get back to you. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.